Hello everyone and welcome. Sit back, relax, make a cup of tea or whatever you like to drink and get ready for new stories from Yellowcat. Send your own favorite stories in the comments below and maybe they'll be in our new video. So subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed yet. Let's get started. Reddit lawyers, what is your greatest, most fierce I rest my case moment? Part 2. I'm not a lawyer, but I do occasionally act as a union representative for firefighters in disciplinary matters, arbitrations, and to stand by when they give depositions or are witnesses in court cases, among other things. For a case involving a department and several chiefs who were accused of union busting for firing a union vice president for allegedly lying, having no water in his fire truck, and being out of his area, I went to federal court. The case involved the firing of the vice president. The chief stated that they were driving around randomly and decided to go to the station where this man was assigned because they were in the area at the time. They discovered the truck, which was out of water, and they were unable to locate the crew because they were out somewhere they were not supposed to be. During the course of this investigation, which had been going on for some time, the firefighter in question had already been rehired at another location and even promoted there. A chief sent an email to the department computer, which was included in the case files. In the email, the chief basically said, "Let's go to the station where the guy in question is working so that we can mess with him on the job." However, it was kind of exciting to see them backpedal after we showed it to them because they had to know, or should have known, that we had that. Immediately after the case was resolved in favor of the firefighter, 2 chiefs resigned from their positions. I found that a plaintiff had hidden the fact that when she first moved to the country, she was charged with serious crimes. Her testimony against the cartel was recorded after she had turned over evidence to the state. Due to the fact that she was unable to return to her home country, she was able to obtain her citizenship through this particular method. As a result, she changed her name and started living her life as a citizen of the United States of America after she was granted citizenship. It was literally impossible to find any evidence of this on background checks due to the fact that her name was not connected, she did not have a social media account prior to the name change, and so on. Now, all of the other attorneys on this forum are saying yes, but she wasn't convicted, and even if she had been, the evidence is very limited, and it can only be admitted within 10 years, etc. And they're all saying this. When it came to my goals, none of that mattered, because I wasn't trying to get the criminal charge admitted or anything else of the sort. Rather than that, I was demonstrating that she had lied during her pre-employment screening with my client, who had conducted a background check and, as part of that process, asked for aliases, convictions, and even specific types of charges when she was being interviewed. When I brought this up, I knew that she would crack under the pressure and her advice would also fall apart. This is the best part. The witness stuttering and lying, then correcting, then lying, then recanting, and basically melting down in the most incredible manner was caused by the OPC, which exploded with objections and caused a scene. The outcome of this case was entirely dependent on her credibility, which was now in shambles. Even more impressive was the fact that she had not disclosed any of that background information to her attorney, who had been so self-righteous about her and his case. He was obviously ruined by it. I'm not a lawyer, but I got my last speeding ticket many years ago when I was passing a driver who was going 30 kilometers an hour slower than the speed limit during a time when major highways were closed. I was on my way home and passed him, reaching a top speed of 20 kilometers an hour as I passed him. I told the officer about all of this and how the driver was going too slowly, I couldn't pass because of other cars, and I was going faster than him for safety reasons and to make the trip home less stressful. He gave me a ticket for a lower speed and told me to go fight it, but he never showed up. I finally went to court to fight it months later, and before you go to trial, there's a part where you can make a plea deal with the prosecution to see if they can lower the charges. A charge of holding a cell phone while driving carries a fine of about 4 points and $500 in this country, so everyone there was pleading down. The prosecution probably thought I didn't have much court experience or legal knowledge, so they tried to scare me into pleading guilty. I gave him the finger and said I'll go to trial because I thought my reason for passing would be good enough even if the officer showed up. When the police and lawyers went to call the officer and he wasn't there, they all looked at me like they knew what was going on. Wasn't exactly a rest my case moment, but it was my proudest moment in court. A motion for summary judgment was brought before me in New Jersey, and I was required to argue it. For the purpose of providing context, the plaintiff was walking on a sidewalk in order to get to work from a bus station. We were commercial tenants in a corner building, and our client is a well-known electronics company, so the building bears their name. However, the building is still owned by another entity, and we do not lease the entire building, so there are other commercial tenants in the building. Even though it had snowed 2 days prior to the accident, the owner of the property did not clean the sidewalk of snow and ice, which is something that's required of owners of commercial property in the state of New Jersey. In order to get back onto the sidewalk, the plaintiff had to walk onto the road, and while she was at the neighboring property, she attempted to use the apron that was used for their driveway. However, she ended up slipping and falling. In that motion for summary judgment that I argued, we had 6 arguments, but the one that I was really banking on was that we were tenants in a multi-tenant commercial building, and according to the case law of New Jersey, we were not responsible for cleaning the sidewalks unless there is a provision in the lease argument that stated otherwise. The plaintiff argued that we did not produce a witness who discussed the other tenants. The plaintiff's attorney did not depose our property owner despite the fact that they were a party to the case. My brief in support includes a list of other tenants who have confirmed to me that they were present in the property at the time of the accident. I began my arguments by stating that even if there is no testimony regarding other tenants, my brief listed those tenants. It was the plaintiff who initially made the argument that it was insufficient because there was no evidence in the record. Despite the fact that this is true, I responded by stating that the plaintiff is aware solely on the basis of the lease agreement that we did not have complete control over the entire building. At that moment, the judge turned his attention to the attorney representing the plaintiff and asked, "At the very least, do you agree that my client did not have sole control of the entire building?" It would appear to be the case, according to the plaintiff, if one were to rely solely on the lease agreement. I quickly sat back down after the judge asked me if I had anything to add, and I responded by saying that I did not. The judge then turned back to the plaintiff and asked, "If I were to deny their motion, what are your plans for attaching any liability to them?" The trial was scheduled to begin the following week, and the court was not allowing any additional time for additional discovery. There was no time to request another witness from us to discuss snow removal at the property. Our original witness did not know anything about snow removal at the property, and we were banking on the property owner being deposed and explaining that it was them. But as I mentioned earlier, the plaintiff never deposed them before the motions were due to be filed. To his credit, the plaintiff's counsel answered honestly that he did not know because he could not show us liable either through the lease agreement or because there was no space to do so. The motion was argued on a Thursday, and by Monday, my motion was granted. What's your best story about quitting a job? Part 2. Couple of jobs back, I started the exodus of our senior sales staff. The 2007 to 2008 market crash had some effects on this small financial company, but it wasn't too bad. Some offices didn't do well, which kept us from meeting our company goals, but my office did great. We got 2 new clients for every one we lost. Our sales were amazing, and it all came down to the top 7 or 8 people out of a group of 20. As we worked hard to meet our sales goals, other tasks would get behind. There would be 10 calls to existing clients every day, and all meetings would need to be recorded in Salesforce within 24 hours. Most of us weren't making our relationship maintenance calls because we were selling things. My team didn't leave until 6 p.m., even though they got there at 6 a.m. Most of the time in between was spent in meetings about sales and making new products. Our sales boss scolded us for not making those maintenance calls. We thought our bonuses would go down because the company didn't meet its goals, but our own goals had been crushed. We were so wrong. The way our bonuses worked, they built on the bonus you got the year before. So, if I got a $10,000 bonus last year, that was what I planned to do this year. They did it to explain why our base pay was so low. Any given year could have huge effects on pay in the future. When I walked into our comp meeting, I was 4th or 5th, and based on who else was there, it didn't look good. My boss told me in my meeting that my incentive was only 5% the year before because I wasn't making my outbound calls and we missed our company goals. In the end, that meant I made about $60K. It ought to have been around $85K. I told him to go F himself and left the meeting in the middle of it. I called a few clients, and later that day I had an interview. The new company hired me, and I start in 4 days getting paid twice as much as I do now. I quit before getting my bonus because the new job offer was so good. Most of them had to wait a month before getting their bonuses. As soon as the first 4 checks cleared, the next 6 were sent to clients and competitors within a month. Altogether, they lost 13 senior salespeople in just 2 months. These people had worked for the company for more than 80 years. 8 salespeople with less than a year of experience were left in the office. There were only 2 senior salespeople left who were not team leaders. Both got raises that were almost double what they were before, were given a lot of freedom with when they could show up in the office, and were moved up to the next level of sales. To fill the gap, they had to get replacements from other offices, even international ones. That means beginning all over again in a relationship business. It took 3 years for sales to reach what they were in 2008. I left with our connections to a whole market sector that had only come back a year before. The head of sales was moved to a group that was nothing more than the last door before you leave. It was brutal. About 4 years ago, I worked at a very well-known chain restaurant, and I worked every D position they had, from bussing to serving to takeout to hosting to making the D bread. My management were the most underappreciative pieces of S I've ever encountered. One day I woke up and realized I was extremely sick, but couldn't particularly afford a doctor's visit at the exact moment, so I figured I would stroll over to my job since I worked across the street so that I can give them a visual to my condition since they wouldn't give an S over the phone. I had to drag myself to the manager's office even though it was hours before my shift. I looked like I was gonna die any second. When I told them what was going on, they said, "I don't care, you're the only one we have scheduled for this shift today." Very nice. Because I'm a hard worker, I chose to show up and not just not call or show up. Because I'm a mean person, I also decided that since they were effing me, I would F them too. As I waited for the restaurant to fill up and then empty out, I looked at every dirty table, took off my apron, and walked right out the door. I got a plethora of angry calls and voicemails from my manager while I sat on my porch and smoked. Bleep them. Web development job, just 12 employees. It was a small company, but we had about 200 clients who paid a monthly fee of €500. These clients sent us enough work to keep us all busy. Good job for 40 hours for everyone. €100,000 a month, which is pretty much free. We made a crazy amount of money at €200 an hour for custom work, almost no cost, and so let's sum up what's going on. The owner bought a brand new Porsche, then another one, and then a big car. He kept the cars instead of selling them. He bought this very big house with garage boxes that can hold about 20 cars. He was showing off how rich he was. He was naturally hesitant to hire new people. He has to pay someone else more money every month because they take time to train. There was no link between him and the idea that we could do more work. In other words, he pretty much made us work harder. We didn't say much during the 44 hours. The work was coming from somewhere, but we thought it might be more sales, right? We should all be happy because having more money's good for everyone. Then 47 hours on average, and then 50, 55, 60. The months went by, but no one joined, got a raise, or got paid for their overtime. No one was happy. Nobody was happy. So the tech lead decided he would leave. Then his best friend in the office did too. Then I did too. Then the guys I trained did too. Then all of the others did too. Everything was decided in just 1 hour. It was supposed to be a retrospective scrum session, but it turned out to be a let's quit meet. We handed in our resignation to him on the spot the very same day, and the 12 of us started a new company by ourselves. We let LinkedIn do its magic. More than 100 customers noticed us all getting together on our own company, and more than 100 customers joined us. We got almost all of our customers to work with us after a few months. At that point, our old boss was still very wealthy, but he also had huge monthly bills. Turns out that he leased all those cars instead of buying them, which would have cost him money. Think about how much 15 or so high-end sports cars would cost every month. He also had to pay rent for the house every month. That idiot didn't buy anything because then he'd have to take care of all that crap too. 3 years later, he was bankrupted. That was 5 years ago. As far as I know, he works as an accountant somewhere. If you want to watch the part 1, click the link here. Thank you for subscribing, the likes, and comments. We're very happy to see you all in the comments too. Thanks for your support.